Good morning, and welcome to the joint meeting of the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means and the Senate Committee on Finance. Committee Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Senators Buck, Canizaro, Dondero Loop, Neal, Wynn, Stone, Taylor, Titus, Assembly Members Anderson, Backus, Brown May, Dickman, Hafen, Hibbets, Howdigi, Koenig, Muska, O'Neill, Torres Fawcett, Watts, Yeager, and Chair Monroe Moreno.
Thank you so much. Members, we have a few budget closings today and subcommittee budget reports from their closings. I'll remind everyone to silence your electronic devices. Members will be using their laptops as we go through the meeting today. Hopefully, it's not a very long meeting. We will have public comment at the end of today's meeting. And if you'd like to call in for public comment, that number is 888-475-4499. The meeting ID is 8205-1372-951. And then please press pound. Members will be coming in and leaving. We're at that time of session where we're doing double duty for bill presentations and work sessions and other committees. So I will be one of those members leaving. I will turn over the meeting to my vice chair, Assembly Member Backus, when I have to step out for a bill hearing. So with that, we will start with the budget closings and invite staff to the table for the Commission on Judicial Discipline. And for everyone joining us here in Carson City and Las Vegas and online, good morning. Good morning. You can start whenever you are ready.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Stephanie Day, Fiscal Analysis Division. The Commission on Judicial Discipline begins on page 3 of your closing document. There is one major closing issue, no major closing. The first item is a request by the Commission on Judicial Discipline. It's a request for general fund appropriations of $95,702 over the 25-27 biennium to increase the salaries for 3 non-classified positions. The first is a request for 2 positions in Decision Unit E815. The Judicial Discipline Commission requests general fund appropriations of $36,664 in each fiscal year of the 25-27 biennium for 2 non-classified senior associate general counsel positions from equivalent to executive branch classified grade 45 to grade 47. Commensurate with the duties, commensurate with the position's respective titles, duties, and required qualifications, and the agency believes that the recommended increase from a grade 45 to a 47 is appropriate. According to the agency's presentation at the budget hearing, the positions were formerly non-classified associate general counsel positions, and the titles were changed to reflect the required specialized expertise and increased workload. The next item is a request for the Commission for general fund appropriations of approximately $11,200 in each fiscal year of the 25-27 biennium to increase the salary of 1 non-classified position from a position equivalent to a classified management analyst 2, grade 35, to a classified management analyst 3, grade 37. Commensurate with the duties, with the position's respective titles and duties, and the agency believes that the recommended increase from a grade 35 to a 37 is appropriate. The agency indicated that the position is a paralegal and the incumbent must be knowledgeable with the courts system statewide and receives telephone calls from the press and the public, which requires maintaining confidentiality of sensitive information, including information related to judges. Additionally, due to the size of the office, there is also a sharing of duties as needed, which requires additional knowledge of other positions' duties. The decision for the committees. Do the committees wish to approve general fund appropriations totaling $95,702 over the 25-27 biennium to increase the salaries for 2 non-classified general counsel positions and 1 non-classified management analyst position as recommended by the Commission on Judicial Discipline?
Thank you so much. Members, are there any questions? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
So moved as stated by staff.
This was one that was going to be a no.
Pardon me, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This particular motion, we will not approve the general fund appropriations totaling $95,702 over the 25-27 biennium to increase the salaries of the 2 non-classified general counsel positions and the 1 non-classified management analyst position as recommended by the Commission on Judicial Discipline.
We have a motion to not approve from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assembly Member Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. You can continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are 2 other closing items for this budget account. Fiscal staff recommends the other closing items be closed as recommended by the Commission on Judicial Discipline, with authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you. Any questions? Not seeing any. I'll accept a motion.
As read by staff.
We have a motion to approve from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assembly Member Bacchus. Any questions or discussion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you so much. And we'll move on to the Judicial Branch overview.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Stephanie Day, Fiscal Analysis Division. The Judicial Branch begins on page 7 of your closing packet. Pursuant to Nevada Revised Statutes 353.246, the budget accounts for the Judicial Branch are included in the executive budget but are not subject to review by the governor. Therefore, the budgets presented represent the budget request of the Judicial Branch. There are 4 major closing items in this budget account. The first begins on page 9 of your closing packet. Madam Chair, there are a lot of decision units related to this item. Would you like me to just go through all of them very quickly?
That would be good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Judicial Branch recommends general fund appropriations of $466,260 and reductions to reserve of $22,036 over the 25-27 biennium to fund inflationary increases for various items. The first is Decision Unit M110 for travel and training of its inflationary increases for travel and training of 25% over fiscal year 2025 for most travel, training, and registration costs, plus other miscellaneous increases. On page 10 of your closing packet, the second is Decision Unit M111 for various operating costs. Its inflationary increases of 15% over fiscal year 2025 for operating supplies and 5% per year over fiscal year 2025 for certain professional services, plus other miscellaneous increases. And during the budget hearing, the Judicial Branch provided information that the 15% increase was applied to specific operating expenditures due to inflationary increases imposed by vendors, such as cases of paper increasing by 14.29% from $42 per case in fiscal year 2022 to $49 per case in fiscal year 2025. The next item is Decision Unit M112 for postage. It is a request for 15% increase that was applied, and an evaluation of state mail postage reflects an increase of 8% from an average cost per piece of $1.26 in 2023 to $1.37 in 2025. The next item is the M14, various association membership dues. For inflationary increases for various association membership dues, such as the National Center for State Court Dues, Council for Chief Judges of the State Court of Appeals, membership, and memberships for the Administrative Office of the Court's audit and IT teams. According to the judicial branch, while membership costs were collectively increased across all budget accounts by 7.82% in fiscal year 26 and 11.7% in fiscal year 2027, the costs were evaluated in each budget account, and the inflationary increases recommended varied based on the individual budget account and the actual cost in fiscal year 2024. The next item is Decision Unit M115 for publications. According to the judicial branch, while publication costs were collectively increased across all budget accounts by 4% in fiscal year 2026 and 5% in fiscal year 2027, the costs were evaluated in each budget account, and the inflationary increase recommended varied based on the individual budget accounts and the actual costs in fiscal year 2024. The next item on page 11 of your closing packet is the M116. It's the biannual specialty court conference. On April 7th, 2025, in response to follow-up requests for information following the March 10th, 2025 budget hearing, the judicial branch withdrew its recommendation for the inflationary increases in costs for the biannual specialty court conference. Therefore, fiscal staff recommends not approving Decision Unit M116. The executive budget also includes revenue identified as shortfall of $1,177 in each fiscal year of the 2025-27 biennium in Decision Unit 110 in the State Judicial Elected Officials budget account related to inflationary increases for travel and training. The Administrative Office of the Courts confirmed that the funding source for the decision unit should be general fund appropriations. Therefore, fiscal staff recommends a technical adjustment to change the funding source. The decision for the committees. Do the committees wish to approve the following inflationary increases as recommended by the judicial branch? M110, general fund appropriations of $273,863 and reductions to reserve of $22,036 over the 2025-27 biennium for travel and training, including the technical adjustment noted for the state elected officials budget account, which is budget account 1490, which results in an increase in general fund appropriations of $2,354 over the 2025-27 biennium compared to the amounts included in the executive budget. The next item is the M111, general fund appropriations of $34,382 over the 25-27 biennium for various operating costs. M112, general fund appropriations of $12,336 over the 25-27 biennium for postage. M114, general fund appropriations of $43,560 over the 2025-27 biennium for various association membership dues. M115, general fund appropriations of $52,119 over the 2025-27 biennium for publications. And M116, a general fund appropriation of $50,000 in fiscal year 2027 for the biannual specialty court conference. This recommendation was withdrawn by the judicial branch on April 7th, 2025. Therefore, fiscal staff recommends not approving this decision unit.
Thank you so much. Members, are there any questions on, in this decision unit box? We have M110, 111, 112, 114, 115, and 116. Are there any questions? Not seeing any, I will accept a motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I would suggest that we move to not approve M110, not approve M111, not approve M112, approve M114, not approve M115, and because M116 was withdrawn, not approve.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assembly Member Bacchus. Discussion. Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just looking at M12, and that's for postage, wanting to make sure they will still be able to mail notices, et cetera, without postage. Was this additional postage?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Titus, there is postage that is in the agency's budgets. This would be additional inflationary increases for that postage.
Thank you. And then if indeed the postage did go up and they didn't have enough money, they could always come back to it. Is that correct?
For the record, Stephanie Day, yes, that is correct.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Not seeing any. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you. Moving on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next major closing issue begins on page 13 of your closing packet. It's additional travel and training. Combined with the funding for inflationary increases related to travel and training discussed in major issue 1, excluding the biennial specialty court conference, the additional travel and training recommended by the judicial branch totals $1.2 million over the 25-27 biennium, which is summarized on the table on page 13. During the budget hearing on March 10, 2025, the judicial branch indicated that between the 4 new positions for the judicial education unit funded by the 82nd 2023 legislature and a continuous education committee that was convened, additional training was identified statewide, including in the trial courts. The first item is for Supreme Court Justice and Court of Appeals Judge out-of-state travel. The judicial branch recommends general fund appropriations of $18,633 in each fiscal year of the 25-27 biennium in the adjusted base budget to fund out-of-state travel of $3,500 annually for each justice of the Supreme Court and each judge of the Court of Appeals per Supreme Court policy. So the first decision unit in that item is for the Supreme Court budget. It's included in their base. The current funding for out-of-state travel for the Supreme Court justices is $2,000 per Supreme Court justice, so this is an increase of $10,500 in each fiscal year. The next item is for the Court of Appeals budget account, and it's also in base, and it's an increase in the adjusted base of $8,133 in each fiscal year. The current amount is $789 per judge. During the budget hearing, the judicial branch testified that the out-of-state travel for the Court of Appeals judges in the 23-25 biennium should have been consistent with the level provided for each judge, each Supreme Court justice of $2,000 per fiscal year. The agency also indicated that due to the increased costs, the previously approved amount of $2,000 per justice and judge per fiscal year is no longer adequate, especially when traveling to locations such as Washington, D.C. and New York. Did you want me to go through this whole section also? Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item is the Comprehensive Continuous Learning Plan. In the Supreme Court budget account, it's Decision Unit E-125. According to testimony in the judicial branch, by the judicial branch at the Legislative Commission's Budget Subcommittee budget hearing on January 28, 2025. Although training for judges is mandatory, it has been nearly 15 years since it has educated judicial branch employees. The recommended training would be for a combination of online education and live education, both in person and remote, and would also include bringing all staff together biannually. So in the Supreme Court budget, Decision Unit E-112, it's general fund appropriation of $12,158 in each fiscal year of the 2025-27 biennium to send 4 additional staff attorneys from the Central Legal Office to the National Association of Appellate Court Attorneys Annual Conference. The court indicates that the recommended funding would be needed in either or both fiscal years of the biennium and requests that any unspent funds in fiscal year 2026 balance forward to fiscal year 2027. This request is included in the closing documents for the Supreme Court budget account. The next item is the Administrative Office of the Courts Decision Unit E125, its general fund appropriations of approximately $700,000 over the 2025-27 biennium for comprehensive training and education of judges, trial court staff, and Supreme Court staff. The court also indicates that this funding would be needed in either or both fiscal years of the biennium. During the budget hearing, the judicial branch indicated that the trainings would be provided through a combination of live in-person, live online, and on-demand modules, and would include court staff statewide, including trial court judges and staff with a focus on the local court staff that support the judicial officers, clerks, etc. On page 15 of your closing packet is the list of the trainings that would be included in that. There's trial court staff training of approximately $350,000 over the 2025-27 biennium. New Judge Academy training that's approximately $65,000 over the in fiscal year 2027 for up to 32 new judges, 11 mentor judges, and 2 administrative office of the court staff at $1,455 per participant. The Rural Judges Conference, it's approximately $135,000 for a 2.5-day in-person conference supporting rural-specific issues for 90 attendees, presenters, and staff at $1,496 per participant. Rural judges handle broader dockets, and the conference covers topics that address the training needs of rural judges according to the judicial branch. The next is, number 4, is the Regional Council Continuing Legal Education. It's approximately $41,000 over the 2025-27 biennium to provide $208 for each of the 197 judges, and the training is offered through the Regional Judicial Council meetings as part of the Comprehensive Continuous Learning Plan. Number 5 is the Water Law, $55,000 in fiscal year 2026 for the cost of the Dividing Waters Conference in Missoula, Montana, hosted by the National Judicial College. The conference cost is $1,478 per attendee. With travel expenses, the course is budgeted at $2,500 per judge. During the budget hearing, the judicial branch testified that the recommendation includes $12,500 from the National Judicial College towards the one-time Western States Water Law Consortium membership of $50,000. The last item in this group is the recommendation also includes registration fees for IT staff skills training of $32,000 and conference application software of $22,027 over the 25-27 biennium. The next decision unit is in the Supreme Court budget account. It is Decision Unit E306, $11,970 in each fiscal year of the 25-27 biennium for additional supervisory travel for central legal staff that would allow one staff member to travel in-state for up to 2 days each month. And this funding is also requested as in both years by the judicial branch. The next item is on page 16 of your closing document. It is the Court of Appeals Decision Unit E311, approximately $56,000 over the 25-26 biennium to fund an increase in in-state travel and training for the courts. This is also requested in either or both fiscal years of the biennium. During the budget hearing on March 10th, 2025, the judicial branch testified that even prior to the pandemic, the Court of Appeals travel budget has not been maintained at an adequate level. Therefore, additional funding is recommended to allow for additional trips and potentially allow for remote oral arguments at locations other than the Carson City or Las Vegas, which would provide outreach to those communities. And that's the Court of Appeals request in Decision Unit E311. The next item is in the Administrative Office of the Courts budget account. It's Decision Unit E303, $33,744 in each fiscal year of the 25-27 biennium for additional IT-related travel, including case management system-related travel and IT management quarterly travel between Carson City and Las Vegas to meet with staff in person. According to the judicial branch, IT staff are required to travel to courts statewide to review the capabilities of their case management systems, to review processes and assist with knowledgeable transfer that is specific to the particular court and their processes, and also allow for the completion of the implementation of the case management and e-file systems, as well as travel to deploy kiosks for self-representing litigants to file. This is also requested in either or both years of the biennium. The next item is the Administrative Office of the Court's budget account, Decision Unit E309, approximately $31,000 over the 25-27 biennium for additional travel and training for the court's people operations team. This is their human resources team, to allow all employees to provide assistance to both internal and external customers and provide funding for registration at the Government Social Media Conference, which is an annual social media conference geared toward business entities and improve social media engagement. This is also requested in either or both fiscal years of the biennium. On page 17 of your closing packet, during the budget hearing on March 10th, 2025, the judicial branch testified that the cost of travel is going up, and with the expansion of staff in Las Vegas, the majority of the travel recommended is in lieu of hiring additional supervisory staff in each location. The decision for the committees. Do the committees wish to approve general fund appropriations of $539,553 in fiscal year 2026 and $392,734 in fiscal year 2027 to fund the following increases to travel and training as recommended by the judicial branch? Number one is in base, Supreme Court, budget account 1494, $10,500 in each fiscal year of the 2025-27 biennium in the adjusted base budget to fund out-of-state travel of $3,500 annually for each justice of the Supreme Court per judicial court policy. Number two, base, Court of Appeals, budget account 1489, $8,133 in each fiscal year of the 25-27 biennium in the adjusted base budget to fund out-of-state travel of $3,500 annually for each judge of the Court of Appeals per Supreme Court policy. Number three, E125, Supreme Court budget account 1494, $12,158 in each fiscal year of the 2025-27 biennium to send 4 additional staff attorneys from the central legal staff to the National Association of Appellate Court Attorneys Annual Conference. Number 4, Decision Unit E125, Administrative Office of the Courts, budget account 1483, $419,297 in fiscal year 2026 and $273,081 in fiscal year 2027 for comprehensive training and education of judges, trial court staff, and Supreme Court staff, also known as their Comprehensive Continuous Learning Plan. Number 5 is Decision Unit E306, the Supreme Court budget account 1497, $11,970 in each fiscal year of the 2025-27 biennium for additional supervisory travel for central legal staff. Number 6, Decision Unit E311 in the Court of Appeals budget account, which is budget account 1489, $28,151 in fiscal year 2026 and $27,448 in fiscal year 2027 to fund an increase in in-state travel and training to restore funding to pre-pandemic levels. Number 7 is Decision Unit E303 in the Administrative Office of the Courts budget account 1483. It's $333,744 in each fiscal year of the 25-27 biennium for additional IT-related travel, including case management system-related travel and IT management quarterly travel between Carson City and Las Vegas to meet with staff in person. And the last item is number 8, Decision Unit E309, Administrative Office of the Courts budget account 1483, $15,600 in fiscal year 2026 and $15,700 in fiscal year 2027 for additional travel and training for the court's people operations team.
Thank you so much. That was a lot. And just a question before I go to the members. For most of these decisions, and we have 8 of them, there is funding in their base budget for these positions. A number of them are expansions to get them back to pre-pandemic travel numbers. Am I understanding that correctly?
Thank you. For the record, Stephanie Day, Fiscal Analysis Division. Madam Chair, that is correct. There are a lot of these items that there's funding in the base budget. I believe the Comprehensive Continuous Learning Plan is quite an expansion of training dollars.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Not seeing any, I will accept a motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I would move to not approve item number 1, to approve number 2 with a revised amount of $3,633 in each fiscal year of the 25-27 biennium, which would allow for out-of-state travel of $2,000 annually for each judge of the Court of Appeals, consistent with the current level for each justice of the Supreme Court. To not approve number 3. To approve number 4, excluding the trial court staff training of $342,250 over the 25-27 biennium. And to not approve item number 5, item number 6, item number 7, and item number 8.
Thank you so much. We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assembly Member Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. You can continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next major closing issue in your packet begins on page 18 of the closing document. It is the Judicial Branch recommends general fund appropriations in the adjusted base budget of $1.9 million over the 25-27 biennium to fund increases in licenses, maintenance contracts for computer software and computer hardware. The costs do include inflationary increases of 8% in fiscal year 2026 and additional 8% in fiscal year 2027 for the majority of the licenses and maintenance contracts. On page 19 of your closing packet, as there's a table on page 18, the fiscal year 2024 actual expenditures for computer software and computer hardware, licenses and maintenance contracts in the Administrative Office of the Court, Court of Appeals, Supreme Court, Specialty Court, and Senior Justice and Senior Judge Program budget accounts totaled $1.1 million based on information that's in the table. According to the Judicial Branch, it has estimated the 8% increase in maintenance costs for all deployed systems due to rising IT vendor fees to ensure continued support for both existing and newly deployed systems. The Judicial Branch maintains its own financial system that is not available to fiscal staff, therefore researching of actual transactions is not possible. The fiscal year 2024 actual expenditures reflected in the budget accounts for software and hardware license maintenance contracts total $1.1 million. The Judicial Branch recommends for fiscal year 2026, $1.9 million and $2.1 million for fiscal year 2027 in the adjusted base budget. The recommended costs for certain software and hardware license maintenance contracts are based on the fiscal year 2025 budgeted amount instead of the actual expenditures for the current biennium. On page 20 of your closing packet, during the budget hearing on March 10th, 2025, the Judicial Branch testified that technological changes that the court has faced in the last 7 years have been significant, and balancing current IT needs with what has happened even 6 months prior can be a significant challenge. In addition to the IT environment shifting from single one-time purchases to subscription-based with ongoing costs. The Judicial Branch indicated that while IT costs, including computer software, computer hardware license maintenance contracts, were transferred between budget accounts, which was allowable based on the flexibility that was offered to the Judicial Branch by this body last session. The contract costs were transferred between budget accounts, but the expenditure general ledger number were not used, and instead all costs were reflected in one GL. The agency indicated that the total amount approved in the agency's budget accounts was $1.5 million instead of the $1.1 million reflected by fiscal staff. Attachment A includes the individual license and maintenance contracts with a provided invoice amount, which was provided by the judicial branch. They provided all of the individual invoices for the license and the contracts to fiscal staff. The attachment does include all of those costs that were requested by the judicial branch and included in the executive budget, and there's also an adjusted amount primarily based on the invoice amounts with limited exceptions. Fiscal staff notes that the judicial branch's recommended costs for fiscal year 2026 and 2027 include the 8% per year inflationary increase for the majority of items. Funding those items at adjusted levels based on primarily on the invoice amounts would result in reductions in general fund appropriations of approximately $184,000 in fiscal year 2026 and approximately $280,000 in fiscal year 2027 compared to the executive budget. If the inflationary increases of 8% per year were applied to the adjusted levels, totaling $152,777 in fiscal year 2026 and $213,211 in fiscal year 2027, the savings in general fund appropriations would be reduced to $31,003 in fiscal year 2026 and $66,802 in fiscal year 2027. The decision for the committees is on page 21 of your closing packet. Do the committees wish to fund increases in the adjusted base budget for computer software and hardware licenses maintenance contracts? If so, do the committees wish to approve general fund appropriations of A, $861,616 in fiscal year 2026 and $1 million in fiscal year 2027 as recommended by the judicial branch, or B, $677,236 in fiscal year 2026 and $748,455 in fiscal year 2027, based primarily on the invoices provided to fiscal staff, which results in reductions in general fund appropriations of $463,793 over the 25-27 biennium as compared to the executive budget. And if the committees wish to approve option B, do the committees also wish to approve general fund appropriations of $152,777 in fiscal year 2026 and $213,211 in fiscal year 2027 to fund inflationary increases of 8% per fiscal year for the majority of the items as recommended by the judicial branch, which results in reductions in general fund appropriations of $97,805 over the 25-27 biennium as compared to the executive budget.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions on this decision unit? Not seeing any, I'll entertain a motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I would move to approve option B, $677,236 in fiscal year 26 and $748,455 in fiscal year 27, based primarily on the invoices provided to the fiscal staff, which results in reductions in general fund appropriations of $463,793 over the 25-27 biennium as compared to the executive budget, and not approve the general fund appropriations of $152,777 in fiscal year 26 and $213,211 in fiscal year 27 to fund the inflationary increases.
Second.
Thank you so much. We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. You can continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I know I'm talking fast. I know you have a lot to get through today.
You're great.
Major issue number 4 is on page 21 of your closing packet. It is the judicial branch recommends general fund appropriations totaling approximately $766,000 over the 25-27 biennium to fund requests related to IT. The first is Decision Unit E285 in the Administrative Office of the Courts budget account. The request is general fund appropriations of approximately $168,000 over the 25-27 biennium for contract staffing to maintain legacy systems while the court modernizes systems and migrates to the cloud. On page 22 of your closing packet, the recommendation would add contract staff to work on the legacy systems, and with the shifting of those legacy system tasks that are currently being completed by existing staff, the court's existing IT positions can shift their focus to modernization. The agency also clarified that the 6 contract staff that are recommended to be converted to state staff in Decision Unit E278 in the Judicial Department Staff Salaries Budget Account, which we will get to further into this closing packet, with operating costs recommended in Decision Unit E278 in the Administrative Office of the Court's Budget Account are not related to the legacy systems. The next request is Decision Unit E301, the Administrative Office of the Court's Budget Account, general fund appropriations of approximately $176,000 in each fiscal year of the 2025-27 biennium for the support and continued development of an electronic portal to improve the oversight and management of guardianships that would allow the state to identify the number of guardianships that are supervised by the court and issues in guardianship, including abuse, neglect, and financial mishandling, through uploading bank account, investment, and asset information. During the budget hearing on March 10th, 2025, the judicial branch indicated there is an annual reporting required in all of the guardianship portals that they are aware of in other states, which requires that guardian to send in an annual report. The issues would be detected at that time, whereas the judicial branch's portal would allow for the information to be provided in real time through electronic means, allowing for fraud to be detected. This is also funding that is requested in either or both fiscal years. The next item is Decision Unit E302 in both the Supreme Court and the Administrative Office of the Court's budget. It is a net increase in general fund appropriations totaling approximately $173,000 in fiscal year 2026 and approximately $73,000 in fiscal year 2027 to allow the judicial branch's IT unit to operate independently from the executive branch Office of the Chief Information Officer. The recommendation includes software, license and maintenance contracts, and reductions. That's approximately $1.1 million over the 25-27 biennium. And there's also reductions of $426,026 in each fiscal year of the 25-27 biennium to eliminate OCIO services that would no longer be provided by the executive branch, including server hosting and SilverNet access, which is the state's wide area network that includes access to the internet outside. This funding is also requested in either or both fiscal years. Based on testimony at the budget hearing on March 10th, the judicial branch was contemplating not moving forward with the recommendation, but based on information provided on March 20th, 2025, the judicial branch has decided to move forward with the separation as included in the executive branch. The ongoing costs in future biennia to operate independently consists of 3 cybersecurity personnel and internet connection costs, and the network equipment is on an evergreen plan, and the court tends to purchase its network equipment with a 10-year license. Therefore, additional funding for that would not be needed for approximately 5 more years or 5 more legislative sessions, according to the judicial branch at the budget hearing. On April 7th, 2025, in a follow-up request for information, the court indicated that if the separation is approved, the responsibilities currently performed by the OCIO would be absorbed by existing IT staff and would be managed, and that staff would manage the associated duties without an increase in staffing levels. Conversely, if the separation from the OCIO is not approved, the court does not foresee a reduction in IT staffing, since the existing IT staff continue to play a critical role in their cloud computing environment and remain responsible for addressing internet service disruptions and outages in coordination with their current internet service provider. The decision for the committees is on page 24 of your closing packet. Do the committees wish to approve general fund appropriations of $765,830 over the 2025-27 biennium recommended by the judicial branch to fund the following IT-related requests. Number 1, Decision Unit 285 in the Administrative Office of the Courts budget account, $82,000 in fiscal year 2026 and $86,100 in fiscal year 2027 for contract staffing to maintain legacy systems while the court modernizes systems and migrates to the cloud. Number 2 is Decision Unit 301, also in the Administrative Office of the Courts budget account, $175,930 in each fiscal year of the 25-27 biennium for the support and continued development of an electronic portal to improve the oversight and management of guardianships. The last item is Decision Unit E302, also Administrative of the Office of the Courts budget account and the Supreme Court budget account. It's a net increase of general fund appropriations totaling $245,870 over the 2025-27 biennium to allow the judicial branch's IT unit to operate independently from the executive branch OCIO, which includes reductions in cost for services that would no longer be provided by the executive branch of $426,026 in each fiscal year of the 25-27 biennium.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions? Not seeing any, I'll entertain a motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I would move to approve E285, E301, and E302.
Thank you so much. We have a motion for approval from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Stephanie Day. On page 24 of the last item in this closing packet is budget flexibility granted by the 82nd 2023 Legislature through Senate Bill 511, Section 42. The 82nd 2023 Legislature approved budget flexibility for the judicial branch for the 2023-25 biennium that allows general funds appropriated to specific budget accounts to be transferred between budget accounts and between fiscal years for the approval, with the approval of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Those are the operating budgets of the Supreme Court, Administrative Office of the Courts, Court of Appeals, Senior Justice and Senior Judge Program, and Supreme Court Law Library. This authority is limited to operating budgets only. The Supreme Court must submit quarterly reports to the Interim Finance Committee regarding such transfers. The authority to transfer general fund appropriations between budget accounts and fiscal years does not apply to the specialty court, state judicial elected officials, and judicial department staff salary budget accounts, and the Supreme Court is prohibited from requesting additional money from the Interim Finance Committee contingency account or a supplemental appropriation for the judicial department staff salaries budget account. The judicial branch recommends the same language for its operating budgets for inclusion in the Appropriations Act for the 2025-27 biennium. The decision for the committees: do the committees wish to approve the inclusion of the same language in the Appropriations Act for the 2025-27 biennium that was included in Senate Bill 511 of the 82nd 2023 legislative session, including the limitations on the specific budget accounts for which the authority is granted, and the prohibitions related to the judicial department staff salaries budget account? If so, do the committees wish to also require the Supreme Court to submit quarterly reports to the Interim Finance Committee regarding any such transfers?
Members, any questions? Not seeing that, I do have one question for you. There was a requirement for quarterly reports after the last legislative session. Were those reports submitted?
Madam Chair, for the record, Stephanie Day, for the record, yes, they were.
Thank you so much. Any other questions, members? Not seeing any, then I will entertain a motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I would move to approve as read by staff.
Second.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Stephanie Day, Fiscal Analysis Division. The Supreme Court Budget Account 1492, begins on page 29 of your closing packet. Other closing items section of this budget account, as well as the majority of the remaining judicial branch budget accounts in this closing packet, include the decision units presented in the judicial overview closing document. The decisions for the committee will include recommendations from fiscal staff that the corresponding decision units be closed consistent with the committee's action for those items. And you will see that most of that is included under the heading of category, such as the inflationary increases were included in major closing issue 1. There are 13 other closing items. Item number 11 is a security camera upgrade, decision unit E292. During the budget hearing on March 10th, 2025, the court withdrew this recommendation. Therefore, fiscal staff recommends not approving decision unit E292. Number 12 is the settlement program, decision unit E316. On April 17th, 2025, the judicial branch also withdrew this recommendation. Therefore, staff recommends not approving decision unit E316. And other closing item 13 is Appropriations Act language for other closing items 7 and 8 related to travel and training that would be needed in either or both fiscal years of the biennium. The decision for the committee's fiscal staff recommends the other closing items be closed as follows, with authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary. Other closing item 1 be closed as recommended by the judicial branch. Other closing items 2 through 6 be closed consistent with the committee's closing actions on major closing issue 1 in the judicial branch overview related to inflationary increases. Other closing items other closing items 7 and 8 be closed consistent with the committee's closing actions on major closing issue 2 in the judicial branch overview related to additional travel and training, including the inclusion of language in the Appropriations Act noted in other closing item 13. Other closing item 9 be closed consistent with the committee's closing actions on major closing issue 4 in the judicial branch overview related to information technology. Other closing item 10 be closed consistent with the committee's closing actions on major closing issue 2 in the judicial department staff salaries budget account, which is budget account 1482, related to new positions. And other closing items 11 and 12 not be approved due to the judicial branch withdrawing the recommendations on March 10th, 2025 and April 7th, 2025, respectively.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Not seeing any, I'll entertain a motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I would move to approve as read by staff.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assembly Member Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. Moving on to our next budget. 1482.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Stephanie Day, Fiscal Analysis Division. The Judicial Department staff salaries budget begins on page 33 of your closing packet. The adjusted base budget for the Judicial Department staff salaries budget account, inclusive of the M100 and M300 decision units, include general fund appropriations of $32.1 million in fiscal year 2026 and $33.4 million in fiscal year 2027 to fund the salaries and benefits of judicial staff excluding elected officials, which represents an increase of $3.5 million or 12.4% in fiscal year 2026 and $4.9 million or 17% in fiscal year 2027 over general fund appropriations approved by the 82nd 2023 legislature of $28.6 million in fiscal year 2025. During the judicial branch's budget closing on May 1st, 2023, in addition to other restrictions and reporting requirements, the Senate Committee on Finance and the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means required enhancement decision units in future budget submittals for recommendations for new positions and/or increases in the total funding level of salaries approved by the legislature. However, as previous, the judicial branch included both salary increases and the establishment of new positions in its base budget. During the 82nd 2023 legislative session, the judicial branch recommended moving its positions excluding elected officials into a new non-classified position classification with salary increases of varying degrees through a new proposed judicial branch classification and compensation schedule. The 82nd 2023 legislature did not approve funding for the judicial branch's proposal as submitted, but approved various other budgetary measures. The 82nd 2023 legislature approved the consolidation of the judicial branch's 170 existing and 30 new non-elected positions into a new judicial department staff salaries budget account, and through the passage of Senate Bill 58, provided the Supreme Court with the authority to employ such persons as it deemed necessary with salaries and benefits determined by the Supreme Court within the limits of legislative appropriations available for that purpose. The 82nd 2023 legislature approved $28.6 million in fiscal year 2025 to fund salaries and benefits for the judicial branch's 200 non-classified positions. The fiscal year 2025 approved funding provides for salaries for judicial branch positions at the levels approved by the 81st 2021 legislature, inclusive of COLAs approved by the 82nd 2023 legislature for executive and legislative branch staff not represented by a collective bargaining unit, plus funding to allow for all positions calculated at that time using the judicial branch's position structure equivalent to the classified service grade and step system to be calculated at step 10, but did not approve additional funding of approximately $1.5 million in each fiscal year of the 2023-25 biennium that was recommended by the judicial branch to reclassify and/or provide salary increases to 54 positions identified by the judicial branch, and also did not approve general fund appropriations of $570,010 over the 2023-25 biennium to fund 2 additional non-classified positions. The judicial branch included $1.3 million in each fiscal year of the 25-27 biennium in the adjusted base budget to fund 8 positions that the agency added in fiscal year 2024, in addition to the 30 positions approved and funded by the 82nd 2023 legislature, in accordance with Section 13 of Senate Bill 58 from the 2023 session. The judicial branch presented a report to the Interim Finance Committee at the August 15th, 2024 meeting, which was information item Q2, that included justification for these positions. The positions included 6 IT positions. One was a grade equivalent to a grade 48 that the judicial branch indicated would be reclassified in fiscal year 2026, equivalent to a grade 53. There was 1 IT position equivalent to a grade 43, and 4 positions equivalent to a grade 42 in classified service. There was also 1 online information specialist at a grade 40 and 1 staff attorney equivalent to a grade 47. While the legislature did not fund the proposal to implement the proposed compensation schedule based on a living wage, it did provide the judicial branch with a judicial department staff salary budget account to provide the judicial branch with discretion on how the funds in that budget account were dispersed or are dispersed. However, it appears the judicial branch implemented a living wage classification and compensation structure over the 23-24 interim, despite not being funded by the 82nd 2023 legislature, which created the ability for staff to receive merit increases beyond the funding limits approved by the 82nd 2023 legislature. The judicial branch indicated that, due to the legislature not fully funding the living wage compensation schedule, the compensation schedule was partially implemented, and the agency did not provide merit increases in fiscal year 2024 and fiscal year 2025. The judicial branch also stated that the court's budget request reflects mandatory adjustments to the base to restore merit increases for fiscal year 2025. Therefore, fiscal year 2026 includes a 10% adjustment to the base budget, and fiscal year 2027 includes an additional 5% adjustment to the base budget for the court's current 208 non-classified positions. That's made up of the 200 positions approved by the 2023 legislature and the additional 8 positions that were added in fiscal year 2024. Finally, the judicial branch indicated that the budget recommended by the court for the fiscal year for the 2025-27 biennium does not include any COLAs and seeks to defer to the legislature for any COLAs provided to employees of the executive and legislative branches. The adjusted base budget recommended by the court includes all judicial branch non-classified positions budgeted equivalent to the classified service grade and step system, including positions that were budgeted with manual annual salaries during the 82nd 2023 legislative session. The table on page 37 of your closing document displays the maximum salaries recommended by the judicial branch for the 2025-27 biennium that are between 3.1 and 30.9% higher than the salaries proposed by the judicial branch during the 82nd 2023 legislative session. As mentioned previously, funding for the proposed salaries was not approved by the 2023 legislature. The court indicates that as part of the judicial branch compensation and reclassification process, all staff positions received at least the 12% COLA increase approved by the legislature for fiscal year 2024, and all positions received an 11% COLA increase in fiscal year 2025. Additionally, any position earning less than living wage defined by the court as a salary of approximately $60,000 per year was adjusted to meet at least the living wage at the time, which that was July 1, 2023, which is reflected in the court's compensation schedule as the minimum starting point for operations support positions. I am on page 38 of your closing packet. I know I'm talking fast. The judicial branch provided a detailed spreadsheet on February 28, 2025 that included 200 positions approved by the 82nd 2023 legislature and the additional 8 positions added by the judicial branch in fiscal year 2024, which is included in as attachment A, which begins on page 49 of your closing packet. It includes 2 tables. One is sorted by position control number. The second table is sorted by percentage change in maximum annual salaries. According to the information contained in the tables, the total base salaries recommended by the judicial branch, that excludes fringe benefits, reflect increases over the base salaries approved by the 82nd 2023 legislature, inclusive of COLAs of $22.3 million. So the base salaries recommended by the judicial branch for the 200 positions funded by the 82nd 2023 legislature represent an increase of approximately $1 million, 4.3% in fiscal year 2026, and $1.9 million, 8.4% in fiscal year 2027 from the legislatively approved amount. If the additional 8 positions are included, the total base salaries recommended by the judicial branch for the 208 positions included in the judicial branch in the adjusted base budget represent increases of $1.9 million, or 8.5% in fiscal year 2026, and $2.9 million, or 12.9% in fiscal year 2027 from the legislatively approved amount. On page 39 of your closing packet, the table on attachment B compares the judicial branch's recommended and maximum salaries for the 10 position classifications, which their position classifications are included in the table at the top of page 37. And it does have examples of the different classifications and the positions that fall within those. So the table on attachment B compares the judicial branch's recommended minimums and maximum salaries for the 10 position classifications to the salaries of classified employees on grade and based on grade and step, as well as select unclassified positions. As reflected in the table, The annual maximum salary for the directors of major departments is $180,534. So that would be the, like the Department of Administration, the Governor's Finance Office, Department of Corrections, the directors for those major departments. The maximum salaries recommended by the judicial branch for the division director of $220,660 and executive director of $242,020 exceed the annual maximum salaries of directors of major departments by $40,126 or 22.2% and $61,486, 34.1% respectively. During the budget hearing on March 10, 2025, the judicial branch testified that it acted in good faith in trying to maintain the guardrails placed upon it in the closing documents of the 82nd 2023 legislative session, and also confirmed that it is prepared to live within its means and meet its obligations if the legislature does not make an additional appropriation for the recommended increase in staff salaries for the positions that were included in the adjusted base. The agency testified that it was focused on ensuring the lowest paid employees were taken care of and received more of a living wage, and the court also provided the COLAs of 12% in fiscal year 2024 and 11% in fiscal year 2025 that were approved by the 82nd 2023 legislature to all employees. The judicial branch testified that it is operated within the funding given for the current biennium, reporting all actions to the Interim Finance Committee pursuant to Section 13 of Senate Bill 58 from the 2023 session, and on its fourth quarterly report in fiscal year 2024, it reported all of the salary increases and 8 new positions that were established within the appropriation. The agency also stated that the 8 new positions created over the biennium which included 7 IT positions and 1 webmaster to operate the court's self-help portal, were not included as enhancements because they were created consistent and pursuant to the legislative appropriation that was provided. The 82nd 2023 legislature funded the judicial branch's existing positions at the maximum salary for the respective positions at the positions classifications at that time. The agency testified that not all positions are at the maximum salary, and even with the addition of the 8 new positions added during the interim, the court could live within the level of appropriation approved by the previous legislature for the upcoming biennium. The judicial branch testified that it has suspended merit salary increases for fiscal year 2024 and fiscal year 2025, which it was requesting to restore. In response to questions during the budget hearing related to the judicial branch's request for additional funding that is made up of not only the 8 new positions, but also changes in grades of the various individual positions, the agency indicated that it did a full classification review, looking at the positions that were historically graded below their peers across different branches and reduced the number of position classifications. The judicial branch testified that no commitments had been made to employees regarding salary increases. As displayed in the table on page 41, the judicial branch recommends funding in the adjusted base budgets for 208 positions, totaling $65.6 million over the 25-27 biennium, inclusive of salaries, benefits, and longevity, which includes $2.6 million over the 25-27 biennium to fund 8 positions added in fiscal year 2024, and $63 million for the 200 positions included in the legislatively approved budget for fiscal year 2025. For comparison, funding the 208 positions included in the adjusted base budget with the salary funding level approved by the 82nd 2023 legislature for fiscal year 2025, inclusive of COLAs, at the maximum salary, which is step 10, or there were other positions that were manual annual salaries, for the respective classifications of the positions, totals $62.4 million over the 2025-27 biennium, inclusive of salaries, benefits, and longevity, which includes $2.5 million over the 2025-27 biennium to fund the 8 positions added by the judicial branch in fiscal year 2024, and $59.8 million for the 200 positions included in the legislatively approved budget for fiscal year 2025. funding the 208 positions consistent with the funding level approved by the 82nd, 2023 legislature of $62.4 million would result in savings of $3.3 million over the 25-27 biennium compared to the funding level recommended by the judicial branch for those positions of $65.6 million. Excluding the 8 positions added by the judicial branch in fiscal year 2024 would increase the salaries by $2.6 million over the 2025-27 biennium, resulting in a net funding level of $59.8 million and a net savings of $5.8 million over the 2025-27 biennium. Fiscal staff notes that due to the position reclassifications, many of the positions included in the executive budget are not at the maximum salary for the respective new grades, and the IT positions requested in Decision Unit E278 include funding for 6 months in the adjusted base budget, funded with American Rescue Plan Act, Coronavirus State Fiscal Recovery Funds, and 6 months in Decision Unit E276. The decision for the committee is on page 42 of your closing packet. Do the committees wish to approve general fund appropriations for salaries, associated benefits, and longevity in the adjusted base budget for judicial branch staff of option 1, $32.2 million in fiscal year 2026 and $33.5 million in fiscal year 2027 as recommended by the judicial branch. This option includes funding for 208 positions with total base salaries of $24.2 million in fiscal year 2026 and $25.2 million in fiscal year 2027 at the employer paid retirement rate, plus associated fringe benefit costs adjusted for applicable rate changes, inclusive of the 8 positions added by the judicial branch in fiscal year 2024. Or option 2, $30 million in fiscal year 2026 and $29.9 million in fiscal year 2027, which reflects funding for the positions with the salaries consistent with the salary funding level approved by the 82nd, 2023 legislature for fiscal year 2025, inclusive of cost of living adjustments at the maximum salary, step 10, for the respective classification of the positions. This option includes funding for the 200 positions included in the legislatively approved budget with total annual base salaries of $22.3 million at the employer paid retirement rate, plus associated fringe benefit costs inclusive of a net increase in fringe benefits due to rate changes, which results in net general fund savings of $5.8 million over the 25-27 biennium compared to the executive budget. And if the committees wish to approve option 2, do the committees wish to also approve general fund appropriations of $1.3 million in each fiscal year of the 2025-27 biennium to fund 8 positions added in fiscal year 2024 by the judicial branch with the salaries adjusted to the legislatively approved level of comparable positions, which results in general fund savings of $84,825 over the 2025-27 biennium compared to the executive budget for those positions. This option includes total annual base salaries of $940,626 at the employer paid rate plus associated fringe benefit costs. If option 2 is approved, including the 8 positions with the salaries adjusted, the total annual base salaries for the 208 positions at the employer paid retirement rate, excluding fringe benefits, would be $23.3 million and would result in net general fund savings of $3.3 million compared to the executive budget.
Thank you so much, Ms. Day, for all of your presentation today and all the work that you've put into these budget items. Do we have any questions regarding these major closing issues? With that, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair, and I would echo the thank you to you for digging in and adjusting some of these as need be so that we can move things forward. So with that, I would move to not approve option 1, to approve option 2 as read by staff, and not approve the additional general fund appropriations of $1.3 million in each fiscal year of 25-27 biennium.
Thank you so much. Chair Dondero Loop, I have a second from Assemblymember Hafen. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries with those present. We'll go to the next item in this major issues.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Stephanie Day, Fiscal Analysis Division. On page 42 of your closing packet, direction by the Senate Committee on Finance and Assembly Committee on Ways and Means. As part of the budget flexibility that was granted to the judicial branch by the 82nd 2023 legislature, including but not limited to the consolidation of all judicial branch non-elected positions into the Judicial Department staff salaries budget account, and the passage and approval of Senate Bill 58, which provides the Supreme Court with the authority to employ such persons as it deems necessary, with salaries and benefits determined by the Supreme Court within the limits of legislative appropriations available for that purpose. The Senate Committee on Finance and Assembly Committee on Ways and Means provided direction to the judicial branch, which is at the top of page 43. So the decision for the committees, and it's the same options that is at the top of page 43. Do the committees wish to continue to provide the following direction to the judicial branch? A, require quarterly reporting to the Interim Finance Committee, including but not limited to information regarding all salary adjustments and the establishment of new positions. B, require individual position data be included in the Nevada Executive Budget System in future budget submittals, including but not limited to working titles, annual salaries, and all position attributes required to allow for system calculation of salaries and benefits, as well as cost of living adjustments and benefit rate changes as applicable. And C, require enhancement decision units in future budget submittals for recommendations for increases in the total funding level of base salaries approved by the legislature, excluding fringe benefits, with the total funding level based on the salary of all positions at the employer-paid retirement rate.
Thank you so much. With that, is there any questions for Ms. Day regarding the reporting? With that, I will accept a motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair. And I would move to approve A, B, and C as read by staff.
Thank you. I have a first from Chair Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Hafen. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries unanimously with those present. We'll go to our next item, Ms. Day.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Stephanie Day. The next major closing issue is on page 43 of your closing packet. It's new positions. There is a table on page 44 that provides a summary of those requests. The first item, the judicial branch has provided priorities for the request for new positions. On page 44 of your closing packet, the first is Decision Unit E275. It is priority number 3 for the judicial branch. The judicial branch recommends general fund appropriations totaling $246,067 in fiscal year 2026 and $302,889 in fiscal year 2027 to add 2 new non-classified Supreme Court marshal positions, grade 40, step 10. During the budget hearing, The agency indicated that the Carson City Courthouse currently has 5 Supreme Court marshal positions, and the Las Vegas Courthouse currently has 4 Supreme Court marshal positions, and the recommendation would add 1 new marshal position for each location. Fiscal staff notes that the judicial branch recommends funding for the 2 new non-classified Supreme Court marshal positions equivalent to classified grade 40, step 10, based on the court's updated classification and compensation schedule. The Supreme Court marshal positions in the legislatively approved budget for the 23-25 biennium were funded equivalent to classified grade 39, step 10. Funding the positions at the legislatively approved level would result in savings for the 2 positions of $23,498 over the 25-27 biennium, including salaries and benefits compared to the executive budget. The decision for the committees is on page 45. Do the committees wish to approve 2 new non-classified Supreme Court marshal positions as recommended by the judicial branch? If so, do the committees wish to approve general fund appropriations of A, $566,170 over the 25-27 biennium to fund the 2 new positions with the salaries and associated benefits as recommended by the judicial branch? This option includes funding for the 2 positions with total annual base salaries of $240,246 at the employee-employer paid retirement rate plus associated fringe benefit costs. Or B, $542,672 over the 25-27 biennium to fund the 2 new positions with the salaries adjusted to the legislatively approved levels of the comparable positions with total annual base salaries of $229,388 at the employee-employer paid retirement rate plus associated fringe benefit costs, which results in general fund savings of $23,498 over the 25-27 biennium compared to the executive budget.
Thank you so much. Committee, do we have any questions for Ms. Day on this enhancement decision? With that, I'll go ahead and take a motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair. And I would move to approve option B, which is $542,672 over the 25-27 biennium to fund the 2 new positions with the salaries adjusted to the legislative approved levels to comparative positions with total annual base salaries of $229,388 at the employee-employer paid retirement rate plus associated fringe benefit costs, which result in general fund savings of $23,498 over 25-27 biennium compared to the executive budget.
Thank you. I have a first from Chair Dondero Loop, a second from Majority Leader Howdigy. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries unanimously with those present. We'll go ahead and move to our next enhancement decision.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Stephanie Day. The next item is Decision Unit E330. It's 1 new non-classified specialty courts program position. The court recommends general fund appropriations of $88,700 in fiscal year 2026 and $112,211 in fiscal year 2027 to add a new support position for the specialty courts program equivalent to classified grade 33 step 5 with ancillary costs to provide a higher level of support to therapeutic courts. Fiscal staff notes that there's 1 position for the specialty courts program currently. The new position was inadvertently coded as an existing position instead of a new position, which results in reductions in general fund appropriations of $5,938 in fiscal year 2026 and $8,269 in fiscal year 2027. Therefore, fiscal staff recommends a technical adjustments to correct the position accordingly. The judicial branch testified that the clerical, administrative, and operational duties currently performed by the specialty courts coordinator, state coordinator, would be transferred to the new position, which would provide the current position the ability to focus on broader funding travel to the specialty courts and have a greater fiscal impact statewide, or greater impact statewide. Fiscal staff notes that the judicial branch recommends funding for the new position to support the specialty courts program equivalent to a classified grade 33, step 5. Fiscal staff identified the following comparable positions in the legislatively approved budget for the 23-25 biennium that are recommended by the judicial branch to be reclassified equivalent to classified grade 33, which were funded in the legislatively approved budget equivalent to classified grade 25, step 10. There's a judicial training support specialist, clerk's office support specialist, and chambers support specialist positions. Funding the position at the legislatively approved level of comparable positions at a grade 25, step 10 would result in savings of $36,676 over the 25-27 biennium, including salaries and benefits compared to the executive budget. The decision for the committees is on page 46 of your closing packet. Do the committees wish to approve one new non-classified position to support the specialty courts program as recommended by the judicial branch? If so, do the committees wish to approve general fund appropriations of A, $193,154 over the 25-27 biennium to fund the new position with the salaries and associated benefits as recommended by the judicial branch? If this option is chosen, fiscal staff recommends a technical adjustment to reduce general fund appropriations by $14,207 over the 25-27 biennium to correct the position as described. This option includes funding for the position with a total annual base salary of $80,054 at the employee-employer paid retirement rate plus associated fringe benefit costs. Or B, $156,478 over the 25-27 biennium to fund the new positions with the salaries adjusted to the legislatively approved levels of comparable positions with a total annual base salary of $61,721 at the employee-employer paid rate plus associated fringe benefit costs, which results in general fund savings of $36,676 over the 25-27 biennium compared to the executive budget.
Thank you so much, Ms. Day. Is there any questions regarding this new position? With that, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair, and I would move to approve option B as read by staff.
Thank you so much. We have a first from Chair Dondera Loop, a second from Majority Leader Howdigi. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries unanimously with those present. We'll go ahead and move on to the last position in this decision.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Stephanie Day on page 46 of your closing packet is a request for 7 contract staff to be converted to non-classified information technology positions. It is Decision Unit E278. The judicial branch recommends general fund appropriations of $671,560 in fiscal year 2027 to convert 7 existing contract information technology staff to non-classified state positions. 6 positions equivalent to classified grade 42 and 1 position equivalent to grade 40, effective January 1st, 2027. The existing contract positions are currently funded with American Rescue Plan Act Coronavirus State Fiscal Recovery Funds. During the budget hearing on March 10th, 2025, in response to questions from the committees regarding the number of positions that the judicial branch is recommending, in addition to the 6 positions approved by the 82nd 2023 legislature and the additional 6 positions added by the judicial branch in fiscal year 2024, the agency confirmed that Decision Unit E278 is a recommendation for an additional 7 state positions that would be converted from contract staff currently funded with ARPA funds, consisting of 6 IT positions and 1 criminal justice liaison who works with the court's criminal justice partners to address the best ways to work with them from a system standpoint. The judicial branch's priorities, there are 6 IT positions that would be priority number 1, and the criminal justice liaison is the judicial branch's priority number 4. Fiscal staff notes that the judicial branch recommends funding to convert 7 contract staff to non-classified IT positions. Similar to the other new positions discussed previously, fiscal staff identified comparable IT positions in the legislatively approved budget for the 2023-25 biennium. The judicial branch recommends 6 positions equivalent to classified grade 42, step 10, 1 position equivalent to classified grade 40, step 10. The legislatively approved budget includes similar IT positions that are recommended by the judicial branch to be reclassified equivalent to classified grade 42, which were funded in the legislatively approved budget equivalent to classified grade 38, step 10, and similar IT positions that were recommended by the judicial branch to be reclassified equivalent to classified grade 40, which were funded in the legislatively approved budget equivalent to classified grade 35, step 10. Funding the 7 positions at the legislatively approved levels of comparable positions as noted would result in a savings of $95,632 in fiscal year 2027, including salaries and benefits compared to the executive budget. On page 48 of your closing packet is the decision for the committees. Do the committees wish to approve the conversion of 7 contract information technology staff previously funded with ARPA coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds to new non-classified state positions as recommended by the judicial branch? If so, do the committees wish to approve general fund appropriations of A, $604,466 in fiscal year 2027 to fund the 6 new IT positions with the salaries and associated benefits as recommended by the judicial branch? This option includes funding for the 2 positions with total and that's a typo. That should be at 6. This position includes funding for the 6 positions with total annual base salaries of $449,965 at the employee-employer paid rate plus associated fringe benefit costs. Or B, $508,834 in fiscal year 2026 to fund, and I need to apologize, this is actually 7 positions for each one of those. To fund 7 new it's the 7 new IT positions and the one criminal justice liaison, so it's a total of 7 positions. So option B is $508,834 in fiscal year 2027 to fund the 7 new positions with salaries adjusted to the legislatively approved levels of comparable positions with total annual base salaries of $372,406 at the employee-employer paid retirement rate plus associated fringe benefit costs, which result in general fund savings of $95,632 in fiscal year 2027 compared to the executive budget.
Thank you so much, Ms. Day, and also catching that little typo. With that, one thing as I noticed earlier, we didn't kind of comment. I know the judiciary may not be coming to a lot of our budget closings, but one of the things that's been tough for our committee this session is really trimming back on a lot of different options. I know we made some decisions, but the judiciary obviously has some autonomy in how they utilize that allocation. With that, I will go ahead and entertain any discussion on this new positions. With that, we'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair. And with that, and thank you again for all your hard work. I would move not to approve this decision unit A or B.
Thank you. I have a first from Chair Dondero Loop, a second from Majority Leader Howdigi. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries unanimously with those present. We can go ahead and move on to our next budget, which is for the Court of Appeals. And we get to keep Ms. Day up here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 59 of your closing packet, the remaining 7 budget accounts that have not been heard by the committees and fiscal staff is responsible for developing the closing recommendations. The first is the Court of Appeals Budget Account 1489. There are no major closing issues. There are 5 other closing items. Closing item number 5 is Appropriations Act language. It's related to the in-state travel and training that was requested in either or both fiscal years. The next budget account is the state judicial elected officials budget account 1490, page 61 of your closing packet. This is the budget account that includes the salaries and benefits for the justices of the Supreme Court, the judges of the Court of Appeals, and the judges of the District Court. So there are currently 7 justices of the Supreme Court, 3 judges of the Court of Appeals, and 90 district judges. There was legislation that was approved this last session. AB 15 is related to the salaries of the district judges, and AB 16, Assembly Bill 16, is related to the salaries of the Supreme Court justices and the Court of Appeals judges, and it changes the salaries, the way that the salaries are budgeted. There are no major closing issues. There is one other closing item. It is related to, in the judicial overview, there was an item that revenue was identified as shortfall, and a technical adjustment was recommended by fiscal staff. That is that technical adjustment. On page 63 of your closing packet is the Senior Justice and Senior Judge Program, Budget Account 1496. This is the Chief Justice is authorized to recall to active service any retired justice or judge of the Nevada court system, and those the Senior Justice and Senior Judge Program is the budget account that funds the costs associated with recalling former justices and judges to expedite judicial business. There are no major closing issues, no other closing items. On page 65 of your closing packet is the Law Library. The Supreme Court Law Library serves as a comprehensive, current, and archival legal research facility for the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals, and also provides legal research services for the Office of the Attorney General, the Legislature, and other state and local government agencies. There are no major closing issues and 5 other closing items. The next budget account is the Administrative Office of the Courts, Budget Account 1483, which is on page 67 of your closing packet. There are no major closing issues. There are 16 other closing items. Item number 16 is Appropriations Act language that is funding that is requested in either or both fiscal years that was already discussed. The specialty court budget begins on page 69 of your closing packet. It is on Budget Account 1495. And there are no major closing issues. There are 2 other closing items. Closing item number 2 is a request for the specialty court conference inflationary adjustment that was withdrawn by the court. On page 71 of your closing packet is the Judicial Support and Governance Special Events Budget Account, Budget Account 1493. It is the last budget account in your packet. This budget account supports the travel expenses of the rural district judges in relation to their judicial duties, travel of judges that serve on a board or commission of a national or regional event, and travel of judges to represent the Nevada judiciary at the legislature or national and regional events. The budget account also provides annual court improvement grants for courts and justice-related organizations to fund technological improvements, operational improvements, in court security and language access. There are no major closing issues and 1 other closing item. On page 73 of your closing packet, As previously noted, fiscal staff is responsible for developing closing recommendations for the following budget accounts. To assist with the closing, fiscal staff has identified the budget accounts that are recommended to be closed as recommended by the judicial branch and requests authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary. Fiscal staff recommends that the following budget accounts be closed as recommended by the judicial branch with authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary. 101-1496, Senior Justice and Senior Judge Program. Fiscal staff recommends that the following budget accounts be closed as recommended by the judicial branch and consistent with the committee's closing actions on major closing issue 1 in the judicial branch overview related to inflationary increases with authority for staff to make other technical adjustments as necessary. 101-1489, Court of Appeals with other closing item 5 closed consistent with the committee's closing actions on major closing issue 2 in the judicial branch overview related to additional travel and training, including the inclusion of language in the Appropriations Act as noted. 101-1490, state judicial elected officials, including the technical adjustment noted in the other closing item. 101-1493, judicial support and governance of special events. 101-1495, specialty court, including not approving decision unit M116 related to an inflationary increase for the biannual specialty court conference, which was withdrawn by the judicial branch on April 7th, 2025. And 101-2889, law library, and consistent with the committee's closing actions on major closing issue 3 in the judicial branch overview related to the additional computer hardware and computer software license maintenance contracts in the adjusted base budget. 101-1483, fiscal staff recommends that the administrative office of the courts be closed as follows, with authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary. Other closing item 1, as recommended by the judicial branch. Other closing items 2 through 6, consistent with the committee's closing actions on major closing issue 1 in the judicial branch overview related to inflationary increases. Other closing items 7 and 8, consistent with the committee's closing actions on major closing issue 2 in the judicial department staff salaries budget account related to new positions. Other closing items 9 through 11, consistent with the committee's closing actions on major closing issue 2 in the judicial branch overview related to the additional travel and training, including language in the Appropriations Act as noted under other closing item 16. Other closing items 12 through 14, consistent with the committee's closing actions on major closing issue 4 in the judicial branch overview related to information technology, including the inclusion of language in the Appropriations Act as noted under other closing item 16. Other closing item 15, as recommended by the judicial branch, including the language in the Appropriations Act as noted in other closing item 16.
Thank you. That was a lot. Thank you so much. Members, any questions on the other closing items? Not seeing any, I'll accept a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I move to approve as Ms. Day read, only because I don't want to reread it. So thank you very much.
We have a motion to approve from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assembly Member Backus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you so much. And Ms. Day, you did an amazing job with this. This was a lot of work, and we cannot thank you enough for what you and the whole team does.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And with that, we will close the budget closings for the judicial branch. And we will move on to our statewide decision units. And the first member of our staff that will be up to present will be Ms. Kaufman. And she'll be followed by Mr. Thorley.
time is La Jobs? Is La Jobs in the afternoon?
I am so sorry. You can start whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Sarah Kaufman, Legislative Council Bureau Fiscal Analysis Division. With me today is Wayne Thorley. He and I will be presenting the statewide decision units for the executive budget for the 2025 to 27 biennium. There are 2 decision units that we will be walking the committees through. The first one is Decision Unit M100, which is statewide inflation, followed by M300, which is the fringe benefits rate adjustments. So with respect to Decision Unit M100, statewide inflation, the majority of the budget accounts included in the executive budget include Decision Unit M100 to adjust expenses for revised costs of internal services. The M100 decision unit recognizes rate changes and modifications to cost allocations and assessments. In total, decision unit M100 adjustments represent increases of $56.6 million in 2026 and $51.7 million in 2027 for all funding sources. The largest contributor of the increases is related to a state-owned building rent, which we will be discussing later in the presentation. Beginning off, I'll identify the various rates that have recommended changes compared to what was approved or what was recommended by the governor. So we'll begin with the personnel assessment. So the personnel assessment represents an allocation to state agencies of costs for recruitment, classification, compensation, and training functions for the Department of Administration's Division of Human Resource Management. The executive budget recommended per full-time equivalent amount of $355.23 each year, which is an increase of $197.05 that was approved by the 82nd Legislature for 2025. The increase in the personnel assessment is primarily due to cost of living adjustments approved during the 23 to 25 biennium, as well as enhancements that are proposed for the Division of Human Resource Management. Fiscal staff has reviewed these rates and identified that some reconciliation adjustments that need to be made, and as such, fiscal staff recalculated the rates and recommend the personnel assessment to decrease from the $355.23 per FTE as recommended by governor to $321.35 per FTE in each of the 25 to 27 biennium fiscal years. With respect to the payroll assessment is an allocation to state agencies of costs of central payroll functions of the Division of Human Resource Management, and the executive budget recommended per FTE amounts of $107.25 in each of the years. For comparison, in the 23 to 25 biennium, the assessments were approximately $36. The increase, again, is related to the cost of living adjustments as well as enhancements that are proposed by the Division of Human Resource Management. So in order to align the rates with the contributions from the agencies, fiscal staff recommends a slight adjustment for the payroll assessment to be decreased from the $107.25 per FTE to $100.16 in each year of the 2025 to 27 biennium. On page 76 is the monthly vehicle rental for in-state. The table on page 76 reflects the vehicle rental rates that were recommended by the governor in comparison to what was legislatively approved last session, and there are no significant recommended changes to these particular rates. On page 77 begins the the discussion related to employee bond assessment. So the employee bond assessment provides for losses caused by fraudulent or dishonest acts committed by employees. The governor's recommended budget did not recommend any changes from the legislatively approved employee bond assessment rates. However, it was determined that there would be a lower than projected balance forward for this from fiscal years 2025 to 2026. And as such, fiscal staff has recalculated the per FTE rate so that the rate would be increasing from $2.68 per FTE as recommended by the governor to $3.88 per FTE in each year of the biennium. With respect to property and content insurance rates, the property and content insurance assessments reflect payments to the Department of Administration's Risk Management Division to ensure state building and equipment. The governor recommended statewide increases of $1.7 million in each year of the biennium, and there are no recommended changes for these rates. With respect to vehicle comprehension and collision insurance, Risk Management Division charges state agencies for the provisions of comprehensive and collision vehicle insurance based on the number of vehicles assigned to the agency. The governor recommended a decrease in the rates from 2025 of $173.34 to $137.31 per vehicle for each year. However, fiscal staff has reviewed these rates and have recalculated it to increase from the $137.31 per vehicle as recommended by the governor to $162.26 per vehicle for each year of the biennium. With respect to vehicle liability, the Office of the Attorney General charges state agencies for the provisions of vehicle liability insurance on the number of vehicles assigned to an agency. And the governor recommended increasing this rate statewide by $1.1 million in each year of the 2025 to 27 biennium. And as a result, the vehicle liability insurance costs was recommended to increase from $342.91 in fiscal year 2025 to $497.64 per vehicle in 2026 and $498.46 per vehicle in 2027. Fiscal staff worked with the Office of the Attorney General's Office and the Governor's Finance Office and calculated a revised vehicle liability rate of $386.24 per vehicle, which included both updates in the funding distribution between the AG tort claim and the vehicle liability assessment and a correction to the vehicle count that was inadvertently duplicating certain vehicles. With respect to the Attorney General tort claim assessment, the AG tort claim assessment provides self-insurance for general liability claims, and the governor recommended statewide decreases of $1 million in each year of the 2025 to 27 biennium, which resulted in a decrease in the cost of the rate of $116.43 per employee to $80.97 per employee for fiscal years 2026 and $80.77 per employee. Again, as previously stated, fiscal staff worked with the Office of the Attorney General and the Governor's Finance Office to calculate the revised AG tort claims and was recalculated to be $136.35 per employee, which again was related to the updating of the funding split between the AG tort claim and the vehicle liability assessments, and they also corrected the FTE count that was inadvertently duplicated in the rate calculation. With respect to the state-owned building rent rate, agencies that occupy state-owned facilities managed by the Department of Administration's Buildings and Grounds are required to pay rent. The governor proposed increases to the rent rate from 94 cents per square foot in 2025 to $1.81 per square foot in the 25 to 27 biennium. Fiscal staff determined that there were several discrepancies in the total square footage of the office space included in the B&G schedule. And as such, we've provided a table on page 78 that identifies a reduction to the state-owned building rent office per square foot per month of 15 cents. So the recommended rate would be going down from $1.81 to $1.66. Moving on to page 78, there is that discussion related to the Office of the Chief Information Officer's assessments and rates. I would just note on the shared web server hosting, given the limited limitations of the state budgeting system rates can only be included up to 6 decimal places, and the governor's recommended rate utilized megabytes that could not be provided for in the rate. As such, this actually got revised so that the rate is based off of per gigabytes utilization. And so that you can see that on a table that is provided on page 81, the reflection of moving from the megabytes to the gigabytes. With respect to infrastructure assessments, the infrastructure assessment funds the division's global services such as help desk, web page development, and centralized servers and routing web traffic. And this is recommended to increase from $307.79 as legislatively approved for the 2025 fiscal year to $557.37 in 26 and $534.20 in fiscal year 2027. Fiscal staff has reviewed these rates and is recommending a slight decrease to those of $544.35 in fiscal year 2026 and $541.25 in 2027. With respect to the securities assessments, the security assessment was recommended to increase in governor's recommended budget from $108.19 to $149.40 in fiscal years 2026 and $149.09 in 2027. However, after reviewing these particular rates, fiscal staff worked with the agency to adjust the security assessment to ensure all associated positions are appropriately included in the rate calculations. And as a result, fiscal staff recommends the assessment be adjusted to $145.28 in 2026 and $144.46 in 2027. There are no significant changes to the expanded help desk support elimination or the OCIO rate adjustments. And so, again, I had mentioned that there is a table on page 81 that provides all of the various recommended updates to the OCIO rates. Fiscal staff identified the need for rate adjustments due to the various issues such as expenses not being aligned with revenues received in multiple OCIO budget accounts and adjustments to FTE counts used in rate calculations. The alignment of revenues and expenses resulted in material impacts to multiple rates. Furthermore, the projected utilization used by the OCIO for certain services differed from the projections used by the agencies when budgeting for expenditures, which adjusted which required adjustments and corrections, which have had a material impact on the rates. And as such, the committee may wish to consider issuing a letter of intent directing the agencies to provide a status update on the implementation of methodology changes used to calculate rates in an effort to undertake to align these agencies' projections with the OCIO's projections. At the bottom of page 81 begins the discussion related to statewide cost allocation plans. So the statewide cost allocation plan is used to recover an equitable share of central service costs, such as budgeting, accounting, and auditing from federal funds and other funds. Agencies that provide these centralized services, such as the Governor's Finance Office, the Controller's Office, and the Treasurer's Office, are supported by general fund appropriations. The statewide cost allocation plan is used as a mechanism to recover these costs from these non-general fund sources, and the agencies utilizing these services are included in the SWICAP allocation. Fiscal staff worked with the Governor's Finance Office on the SWICAP plan for the 2025 to 27 biennium, which the plan was received on March 20th, 25, and as a result is recommending to adjust the amounts collected for SWICAP from $8.1 million in each year of the 2025 to 27 biennium to $9.5 million in each fiscal year of the 2025 to 27 biennium. And the last rate I'll walk the committee through is the Attorney General Cost Allocation Plan. So the Office of the Attorney General employs a cost allocation plan to recover the costs of providing legal services to state agencies. The plan distributes budgeted Office of Attorney General costs based upon actual costs of legal services, service hours provided in prior years. The governor recommended total AG-CAP funding of $33.1 million in 2026 and $33.3 million in 2027. However, after working with the Attorney General and making adjustments to the decisions that were made by the committees in the closing of the Attorney General's office, fiscal staff recommends an AG-CAP of $33.7 million in 2026 and $34 million in 2027. So the decision for the committee is at the bottom of page 82. Does the committee wish to approve adjustments proposed to the various rates and assessments as included in the statewide inflation M100 decision unit as adjusted for the changes to the personnel assessment, the payroll assessment, employee bond assessment, vehicle comprehensive and collision insurance rates, vehicle liability rates, the Attorney General tort claim assessments, statewide building rates, statewide building rental rates, various OCIO rates, and the Attorney General cost allocation plan rates as noted, and provide fiscal staff with authority to make technical adjustments as necessary. And does the committee wish to issue a letter of intent directing the OCIO to provide a status update on the implementation of the methodology changes used to calculate its various rates and the efforts undertaken to align the agency's projections with OCIO's projections for development of its budgets for the 2027 to 29 biennium?
Thank you so much, Ms. Kaufman. Members, any questions on the statewide inflation M100? All right, seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I would move to approve as read by staff.
We have a motion to approve from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assembly Member Bacchus, and that motion would include the authority to make technical adjustments as well as issue the letter of intent to OCIO. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much. We'll move on to Decision Unit M300.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wayne Thorley for the record, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. As the chair noted, I'll be walking the committee through the portion of the document related to the M300 decision unit. You'll find the M300 decision unit in any budget in the executive budget which has state positions in it. And it accounts for changes in various fringe benefit rates. There's a table on page 83 of your closing packet that shows the overall statewide budget impact of the various fringe benefit rate or adjustments. You can see that depending on the benefits, some of the costs are decreasing, some go up. But overall, over the 2025-27 biennium in the governor's recommended budget, there's a cost increase of $214.7 million related to the various fringe benefit rate adjustments. As you'll note on the table there on page 83, there really are two main drivers of this increase. One is retirement, so that's about the fourth line down on the table. You'll see that's contributing to $118.5 million increase over the biennium, so those are related to the PERS rate increases. And then if you go down two more lines to active employee group insurance or AGIS, the total cost is $145.9 million. And this is related to this is the portion that the state pays for health insurance for state employees, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in just a second. So starting with workers' compensation, GL 5200 on the bottom of page 83, the governor's recommended budget included a rate of 3.4%, 3.74% each year of the biennium. That's down a little bit from the ledge-approved rate. After review by staff, the recommendation is to reduce the rate to 3.59% in each year of the 25-27 biennium. So moving on to the next page, page 84, these are the PERS rates. There's a table on the top that identifies these are the actuarially determined rates for the upcoming biennium. There is one recommended change. There was a pay factor error identified in the governor's recommended budget, and so fiscal staff recommends an adjustment to correct that. Otherwise, no recommendations related to the PERS rates. The next item is the Labor Relations Unit Assessment, GL 5430. The Labor Relations Unit is within the Division of Human Resource Management, and they work on issues related to state collective bargaining. This is an assessment charged per FTE that qualifies under collective bargaining. The rate in the after review by staff, the governor the rate that that we're recommending as staff be increased from what the governor recommended, $47.55 million to $47.55 to $54.19 in each year of the upcoming biennium. Then moving on to the group insurance rates, again, AGIS is the first one. Onto page 85, you'll see a table that shows what the state has contributed per participant per month as ledge approved in the past two sessions, and then what the governor recommends. And here you'll see that the ledge approved for the current fiscal year FY25 was $759 per participant per month, and the governor's recommended budget that is recommended increase by 30% to $991 per participant per month in FY26, and then $943 per participant per month in FY '27. So again, that's that driver of that big increase in the AGIS. This is sometimes, again, referred to as the state subsidy. And this is, again, the cost on the state to cover the state's share of health insurance for state employees. Then on to retired employee group insurance on the bottom page 85, sometimes referred to as REGI. The table on the bottom page 85 shows that, again, that the governor recommends a per participant per month increase in the contribution from what was legislatively approved last session. However, this assessment is calculated as a percentage of gross salaries in each budget, and because of the COLAs approved by the legislature last session and the reducing vacancy rate, gross salaries are increasing. So the actual impact there is a reduction in the percentage. For both the AGIS and the REGI, the committees, when they closed the PEB budget accounts on April 15th, approved the assessments identified in the document here. And then lastly, for the unemployment compensation GL 5800, the executive budget recommends a rate of 0.05% in each year of the upcoming biennium. After review by fiscal staff, the recommendation is to increase the rate slightly to 0.07% to provide the needed revenues and align expenditures and maintain a targeted reserve level in the upcoming biennium. So the decision box in the middle of page 86 is, do the committees wish to approve fringe benefit rate adjustments, the M300 decision units as adjusted for changes to the workers' compensation rate, pay factor for employees assigned to the PERS employer pay retirement, police fire plan, labor relations unit assessment, the employment compensation assessment, and excluding the active employee group insurance and retired employee group insurance rates, which were previously approved by the committees on the April 15th, 2025 budget closing date, and provide fiscal staff with authority to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thorley. Members, any questions on the M300? Not seeing any, I'll accept a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I move to approve as read by staff.
We have a motion from Senator Don Darrell-Loop, a second from Assembly Member Backus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you, too, for all your hard work. And with that, we will move on to the reports from subcommittees on their budget closings. And the first one is the State Department of Agriculture. All right, I think everyone got their packet. You can start whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nicolette Johnston, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. I'll be presenting the Joint Subcommittee on General Government Closing Report for the State Department of Agriculture. The Joint Subcommittee on General Government has completed its review of the State Department of Agriculture budget recommendations and the executive budget for the 25-27 biennium. The closing recommendations of the subcommittee resulted in an increase of general fund appropriations of $85,926 in FY 2026 and $90,381 in FY 2027 when compared to the governor's recommended budget. The subcommittee recommended approval of the following closing actions. Budget account for the Administrative Services Division, budget account 4554. The subcommittee recommended approving $150,169 in cost allocation revenue over the 25-27 biennium for new information technology technician position and associated operating costs to support the department's information technology needs as recommended by the governor. The subcommittee further recommended approving $201,989 in department cost allocation revenue over the 25-27 biennium for continued funding for a program officer position to aid the department in implementing its language access plan. Agriculture Registration Enforcement Budget Account 4545. The subcommittee recommended approval of the governor's recommendation to transfer the Pest, Plant Disease, Noxious Weed Control Budget Account 4552 to the Agriculture Registration Enforcement Budget Account 4545, including 7 positions or 6.51 FTE, and total funding of $2.7 million over the 25-27 biennium. This recommendation eliminates the Pest, Plant Disease, Noxious Weed Control Budget Account. The subcommittee recommended not approving funding for replacement equipment totaling $1 million over the 25-27 biennium and directed the department to request the equipment funding through a work program revision once the recent fee increases that were implemented through temporary regulations are made permanent. However, the subcommittee recommended approval of the addition of fee revenues totaling $3 million over the 25-27 biennium associated with the recent fee increases as recommended in Budget Amendment A2582-84545. Additionally, the subcommittee recommended issuing a letter of intent for the department to provide annual status reports to the Interim Finance Committee within 45 days of fiscal year end for FY 2026 and FY 2027 that provide the department's plan to improve the long-term solvency of the budget account and outlines a plan and efforts to charge for services to other budget accounts within the department, outside agencies, and any third-party entities that utilize department laboratory services. The Livestock Inspection Budget Account 4546. To address the solvency issues in this budget account, the subcommittee recommended approval of updated revenue projections based on a 5-year average as provided by the department, reducing the use of seasonal staff, contract staff, and the transfer to the Livestock Enforcement Budget Account 4557 by approximately $160,000 each fiscal year, resulting in projected reserves of $328,317 at the end of FY 2027, and provided fiscal staff with authority to make technical adjustments as necessary. Additionally, the subcommittee recommended issuing a letter of intent directing the agency to report to the Interim Finance Committee every 6 months on the status of its reserves and a plan to ensure the budget account will remain solvent if reserves fall below 60 days of operating expenditures. The subcommittee recommended closing the following State Department of Agriculture budget accounts as recommended by the governor, with minor or no technical adjustments. Plant Health and Quarantine Services, budget account 4540. Pest, Plant Disease, Noxious Weed Control, budget account 4552. Veterinary Medical Services, budget account 4550. Commercial Feed, budget account 4541. Predatory Animal and Rodent Control, budget account 4600. Measurement Standards, budget account 4551. Nutrition Education Programs, budget account 2691. Commodity Foods Distribution Program, budget account 1362. Dairy Fund, budget account 4470, and Livestock Enforcement, budget account 4557. The subcommittee also authorized fiscal staff to make other technical adjustments to the department budget accounts as necessary. And that concludes my report.
Thank you so much for your report. Members, any questions for the Joint Subcommittee closing report for the State Department of Agriculture? Not seeing any. I will accept a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So moved as read by staff.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assembly Member Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you again. Our next subcommittee budget closing report will be the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services. Okay, I think all the members have the packet. We can go ahead and get started.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Colby Nichols. I'm a program analyst, part of the LCB fiscal cohort, here today to present the Joint Subcommittee on Human Services closing report for the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services. The subcommittee has completed its review of the Department of Health and Human Services Division of Welfare Supportive Services and has made the following recommendation for the division's 25 to 27 biennial budget accounts. The subcommittee's closing recommendations result in net reductions of general fund appropriations totaling $348,250 in fiscal year 2026 and $886,870 in fiscal year 2027, or $1.2 million over the 25-27 biennium. The following describes the more significant recommendations of the subcommittee. Regarding the administration budget account, as recommended by the governor, the subcommittee recommended approval of funding for contract costs associated with complying with federal mandates. This includes Decision Unit M503, inclusive of Budget Amendment A254013228, to align the funding sources in this decision unit. Includes total funding of $1.4 million, of which $704,535 is general fund, over the 25-27 biennium for costs associated with the state's participation in a National Accuracy Clearinghouse System for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAP. Decision Unit M506 includes total funding of $7.9 million, of which $2 million is general fund, over the 25-27 biennium to fund contract costs associated with an income verification system for Medicaid. In addition, the subcommittee recommended approval of $47.5 million, of which $2.8 million is general fund appropriations in each year of the 25-27 biennium. This is for both administrative costs, which total $5.5 million each year, and benefits as well, which is $42 million each year, for the Summer Electronic Benefit Transfer, or Summer EBT program. Those program benefits are fully funded by federal grant funding, and the administrative costs are allocated 50% to federal grant funding and 50% to general fund appropriations, as recommended by the governor. To increase staffing in the agency's Human Resources Unit, the subcommittee also recommended approval of $620,955, of which $247,000 and $145 is general fund, over the 25-27 biennium for 4 new positions, including 2 personnel analysts, 1 personnel technician, and 1 accounting assistant, as opposed to the governor's recommendation of $1.1 million, of which $436,748 is general fund appropriations over the biennium for 7 new positions. This results in reductions totaling $479,045, of which $189,603 is general fund appropriations. The subcommittee did not concur with the governor's recommendation for 1 new management analyst position to provide IT-related oversight for the agency, resulting in reductions totaling $191,191, of which $76,353 is general fund appropriations. However, the subcommittee did recommend approval of $187,597, of which $81,335 is general fund appropriations, over the 25-27 biennium for 1 new management analyst position for the Investigations and Recovery Unit, as recommended by the governor. Regarding the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, or TANF budget account, the subcommittee did not concur with the governor's recommendation for opioid settlement revenues transferred from the Fund for a Resilient Nevada budget account totaling $10 million over the 25-27 biennium, but instead recommended approving a reduction of transfers totaling $5 million over the biennium to fund subgrants to local organizations for the provision of family support services to families impacted by substance use disorders. Additionally, the subcommittee recommended approval of opioid settlement revenues transferred from the Fund for a Resilient Nevada budget account totaling $10 million over the 25-27 biennium to fund an expansion of eligibility for the Kinship Care Program to provide cash assistance and support to non-parent relatives younger than 62 years of age who provide care to children who have been removed from their parents due to the parents' substance use issues, as recommended by the governor. Regarding the Welfare Field Services budget account, the subcommittee recommended approval of $4.3 million, of which $1.2 million is general fund, over the biennium for 21 new family service specialist positions to increase staffing for the agency's eligibility functions, rather than recommending approval of the governor's proposal of $5.4 million, of which $1.9 million is general fund appropriations over the biennium for 36 new positions, which included 27 family services specialist positions, resulting in reductions totaling $1.1 million, of which $700,000 is general fund appropriations. Additionally, to increase the agency's capacity to perform investigations and to prevent fraudulent activity, the subcommittee recommended approval of total funding of $637,727, of which $276,494 is general fund appropriations, over the 25-27 biennium for a new supervisory compliance investigator position and 3 new compliance investigator positions for the agency's Investigations and Recovery Unit, as opposed to the governor's recommendation for 7 new positions, including 6 compliance investigator positions at a total cost of $1.1 million, of which $483,009 for general fund appropriations over the biennium, resulting in reductions totaling $462,273, of which $206,515 is general fund appropriations. Regarding the Child Assistance and Development budget to support the division's existing information systems and to help implement a new child care management information system over the 25-27 biennium, subcommittee recommended approval of 2 new program officer positions and 1 new administrative assistant position, inclusive of a technical adjustment to correct the pay grade for 1 program officer position. This results in a total revised cost of $435,007 over the biennium, fully funded with Federal Child Care Development Fund discretionary grant funds. Regarding the Energy Assistance Program budget to align authority with the updated March 2025 caseload projections for the Energy Assistance Program, as well as to correct various errors that were included in the governor's recommended budget, the subcommittee recommended approval of Budget Amendment A255294862, which adds revenue and expenditure authority of $6.2 million in fiscal year 26 and $6.6 million in fiscal year 2027. It's funded through a combination of state universal energy charge revenues and federal low-income home energy assistance program grant funds. Finally, the subcommittee recommended closing the following Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Welfare and Supportive Services budget accounts as recommended in the executive budget with or without minor technical adjustments. That includes Child Care Services, budget account 3149, Assistance to the Aged and Blind, budget account 3232, the Child Support Enforcement Program, budget account 3238, and the Child Support Federal Reimbursement budget account 3239. Finally, for all Division of Welfare and Supportive Service budget accounts, the subcommittee recommended approval of technical adjustments as noted by staff and provided authority for fiscal staff to make other technical adjustments as needed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nichols. Members, any questions on this budget subcommittee closing? Not seeing any. I'll accept a motion.
So moved as read by staff.
We have a motion from Senator Don Darrell-Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you so much, and thank you again for the report. That takes us up to our last report for the day, and that's the Department of Motor Vehicles. All right, it appears all the members have their packet. You can go ahead and get started whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Good morning, members and chair. My name is Liliana Camacho-Polco, Program Analyst, Fiscal Analysis Division, and I will be presenting the Joint Subcommittee on Public Safety, Natural Resources, and Transportation Closing Report for the Department of Motor Vehicles. The Joint Subcommittee on Public Safety, Natural Resources, and Transportation has completed its review of the budgets for the Department of Motor Vehicles, or DMV, for the 2025-27 biennium. The closing actions recommended by the subcommittee have resulted in a decrease of highway fund appropriations of $711,850 in fiscal year 2026 and an increase of $1.4 million in fiscal year 27. The closing actions recommended by the subcommittee resulted in a decrease of general fund appropriations of $8,475 in fiscal year 2026 and $10,000 in fiscal year 2027. Historically, Nevada Revised Statutes 408.235 limited the DMV from expending more than 22% of highway fund collections on administration, excluding gasoline tax revenue that is not subject to this limitation. Since 2015, prior legislatures have increased this administrative cap to 27% due to the increased expenditures associated with the implementation of the Department Transformation Effort Project that would replace the DMV's current mainframe computer system. The increased administrative cap is currently scheduled to sunset at the end of fiscal year 2026, at which time the cap would return to 22%. The department submitted Senate Bill 454 to extend the increased cap threshold of 27% past the current fiscal year 2026 end date, instead allowing it to sunset at the end of fiscal year 2027. To calculate the administrative cap, fiscal staff determined the highway fund appropriations based on the subcommittee's recommendations and the one-time highway fund appropriations associated with the department transformation effort of $48.3 million in fiscal year 2026 and $48.4 million in fiscal year 2027. Based on fiscal staff's calculations of the DMV administrative cap, the department would be over the historic 22% administrative cap by $22.1 million in fiscal year 26 and $19.6 million in fiscal year 27. However, the DMV would be under the current administrative cap of 27% by $2.6 million in fiscal year 26 and $6 million in fiscal year 27. Director's Office Budget Account 4744. The subcommittee recommended approval of the following items as part of the department-wide reorganization. The governor's recommendation to transfer 103 total positions from the Central Services Budget Account to the Field Services Budget Account, contingent upon passage and approval of Senate Bill 455 or other enabling legislation that would establish a new Customer Services Division for the DMV. The governor's recommendation to reclassify 4 DMV Services technicians to DMV Services supervisors in the Field Services Budget Account for total highway fund appropriations of $58,861 over the 25-27 biennium, contingent upon passage and approval of SB 455 or other enabling legislation. The governor's recommendation to eliminate 9 microfilm scanner operator positions in the Field Services Budget Account for total highway fund reductions of $1.3 million over the 25-27 biennium. The governor's recommendation to transfer 6 DMV Services technician positions from the Field Services Division budget account to the Motor Carrier Division budget account and associated revenues over the 25-27 biennium. The governor's recommendation to not approve the transfer of 18 positions from the Compliance Enforcement budget account to the Motor Carrier Division budget account, as reflected in Budget Amendment A25-298-4717 and Budget Amendment A25-277-4740. The governor's recommendation to transfer 19 DMV Services technician positions from the Central Services budget account with the transfer of 10 of the positions to the Research and Project Management budget account and the transfer of the remaining 9 positions to the Field Services Division budget account and associated revenue over the 25-27 biennium, revised by Budget Amendment A253534742 and Budget Amendment A253564735, contingent upon passage and approval of SB 455 or other enabling legislation. The governor's recommendation to transfer 2 auditor positions from the Administrative Services Division budget account to the Director's Office budget account. The governor's recommendation to transfer 1 Master IT professional position from the Automation budget account to the Director's Office budget account. The governor's recommendation to transfer 1 administrative assistant position, 1 DMV services supervisor position, and 6 DMV services technician positions from the central services budget account to the administrative services budget account and associated revenues over the 25-27 biennium contingent upon passage and approval of SB 455 or other enabling legislation. The governor's recommendation to transfer 1 administrative assistant position and 5 revenue officer positions from the motor carrier division budget account to the administrative services budget account, budget amendment A25-617-4711 for record search fee revenue of $69,956 in fiscal year 26 and $72,154 in fiscal year 27 to fund the reclassification of 13 DMV Services Technician 2 positions to DMV Services Technician 3 positions in the record search budget account. Budget Amendment A25-610-4731 for vehicle reinstatement registration fee revenue of $97,470 in fiscal year 26 and $102,285 in fiscal year 27 to fund the reclassification of 18 DMV Services Technician 2 positions to DMV Services Technician 3 positions in the verification of insurance budget account. Budget account A25-611-4735 for highway fund appropriations of $875,135 and other fee revenue of $65,356 over the 25-27 biennium to fund the reclassification of 7 microfilm scanner operator 2 positions and 76 DMV Services Technician 2 positions to DMV Services Technician 3 positions in the field services budget account, and Budget Amendment A25-621-4745 for highway fund appropriations of $12,912 in fiscal year 2026 and $13,592 in fiscal year 27, and vehicle report of sale fee revenue of $38,739 in fiscal year 26 and $40,781 in fiscal year 27 to fund the reclassification of 5 DMV Services Technician 1 positions and 1 DMV Services Technician 2 position to DMV Services Technician 3 positions. The subcommittee recommended not approving the governor's recommendation for funding of $506,984 over the 25-27 biennium for 1 new unclassified chief data officer position to guide the department's data strategy. The subcommittee also recommended the elimination of a vacant program officer position included in the base budget assigned to the administration of the DMV Language Access Plan for a reduction in highway fund appropriations of $201,987 over the 25-27 biennium. However, the subcommittee recommended approval of highway fund appropriations of $387,835 over the 25-27 biennium for contract and printing costs for the DMV Language Access Plan. Department Transformation Effort Budget Account 4716. The subcommittee recommended approval of the governor's recommendation to continue funding the Department Transformation Effort Project, recommending total highway fund appropriations of $9.5 million in fiscal year 2026 and $11.2 million in fiscal year 2027. The DMV also provided an updated estimated total project cost of $306.5 million with an estimated completion in fiscal year 2029. The subcommittee recommended the project be funded with highway fund appropriations and recommended language be included in the 2025 Appropriations Act, authorizing the transfer of highway fund appropriations between fiscal years in this budget account with interim finance committee approval. The subcommittee also recommended approval of the continuation of 28 state positions and 21 master service agreement contractors in fiscal year 26 and 28 master service agreement contractors in fiscal year 27. The subcommittee recommended approval of MSA contractor costs totaling $4.8 million in fiscal year 2026 and $6.5 million in fiscal year 2027. However, the subcommittee recommended the fiscal year 2027 funding of $6.5 million for the MSA contractor expenditures be placed in reserves, which would require the department to generally request interim finance committee approval before expending that funding. Finally, the subcommittee recommended the issuance of a letter of intent requiring semi-annual reports to the interim finance committee on the status of the department transformation effort project. Automation Budget Account 4715, the subcommittee recommended approval of Highway Fund appropriations of $360,671 over the 25-27 biennium to fund one new classified chief IT manager position and associated costs, as well as approval of the governor's recommendation for $1.7 million over the 25-27 biennium for the continuation of 4 contractors to support legacy system data. However, the subcommittee also recommended the DMV be directed to remove these contractor expenses from the adjusted base budget for the 2027-29 biennium. Administrative Services Division Budget Account 4745, the subcommittee recommended approval of the department's revised fiscal year 2026 credit card fee projections of $11.4 million in both fiscal year 26 and fiscal year 27, and authority for the department in the 2025 Appropriations Act to transfer Highway Fund appropriations of up to $2 million between each fiscal year and the 25-27 biennium to fund credit card fees with interim Finance Committee approval. When compared to the amounts recommended in the executive budget, this recommendation resulted in a decrease in Highway Fund appropriations of $1.9 million over the 25-27 biennium, and the subcommittee also recommended the inclusion of language in the 2025 Appropriations Act, indicating that the Highway Fund appropriations approved for the DMV for credit card fees are only to be used for those expenses. The subcommittee also recommended approval of the governor's recommendation for Highway Fund appropriations of $180,168 over the 25-27 biennium for one new management analyst position and associated expenditures to provide contract oversight and supervise the department's current track manager position. Compliance Enforcement Budget Account 4740. Although the governor recommended the addition of 2 new compliance enforcement investigator positions, the subcommittee recommended approval of Highway Fund appropriations of $230,701 over the 2025-27 biennium for one new compliance enforcement investigator position and associated expenditures. This position would primarily provide additional security for the DMV's Office of Administrative Hearings, along with assisting the DMV in addressing the increase in complaints, vehicle fraud, and criminal activity. Motor Vehicle Pollution Control Budget Account 4722. The subcommittee recommended approval of pollution control fee revenue increases of $1.8 million in fiscal year 2026 and $1.9 million in fiscal year 2027, based on a $1 certificate fee increase for the administration of the emission control program and funding provided to various agencies. This fee increase is recommended by the governor and contingent upon passage and approval of Assembly Bill 545 or other enabling legislation. Verification of Insurance Budget Account 4731. The subcommittee recommended approval of vehicle reinstatement registration fee revenue of $765,440 in fiscal year 26 and $829,440 in fiscal year 27 for the continuation of the motor vehicle insurance verification system contract and system enhancements. The DMV currently performs vehicle insurance verification in real time using both the new cloud-based motor vehicle insurance verification system solution and a department-developed solution called the Nevada Liability Insurance Validated Electronically NV Live system. The new cloud-based system would replace NV Live and integrate with the new platform that would be deployed through the Department Transformation Effort Project. Motor Carrier Division Budget Account 4717, the subcommittee recommended approval of one new auditor position and associated expenditures as recommended by the governor for total Highway Fund appropriations of $169,375 over the 25-27 biennium to assist with conducting required international fuel tax agreement and international registration plan audits. And finally, the subcommittee recommended closing the following DMV budgets as recommended in the executive budget with minor or no technical adjustments. Hearings, Budget Account 4732. Central Services, Budget Account 4741. License Plate Factory, Budget Account 4712. Record Search, Budget Account 4711. Field Services, Budget Account 4735. Research and Project Management, Budget Account 4742. The subcommittee also recommended approving technical adjustments noted by fiscal staff and authorized staff to make other technical adjustments to the DMV budget accounts as needed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions? Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I guess, I had questions on the transformation project, and I think what's bothering me is that when I this started in 2015, and they're having a projected end date of 2029. It's like 14 years working on one system. And I don't know if it's because it's highway funds that folks feel like, well, since it's not general fund, I can just, mess off the highway fund for 14 years. But this is like pure madness to me. Like, this is continuing for 14 years. And I know that when I was reading the background, it looks like there might have been a letter of intent. But in all honesty, I feel like there needs to be some either super auditing, like just going back and trying to like really break down what are these intricacies that are being explained, saying that, these small things that we're having to learn and then reprogram. Somebody paid for their college education for their kid on this one. And this is actually not okay. Not to me, but, it's more of a comment and a very explosive comment because this is madness.
It is a comment, but also a question in there, and I don't think staff would be able to address that. We do have someone from the DMV here in the room. Would you like to address your comment and question to them?
Sure, I don't know if I'm going to get an answer that I will appreciate.
Well, at least we'll have something on the record. If we can have the DMV come to the table and just assist with that question/comment, that would be great. Good morning.
Good morning. Tanya Laney for the record, Laney, Director of the Nevada Department of Motor Vehicles. And I would be happy to answer that question. Our project it's not just one functionality that's being addressed through this department transformation effort. If you read the letter of intent that we submit to this body to let you guys know where we are in our projects, this is 867 services that the department offers to the Nevada citizens that are being transformed. We're happy to always invite any legislator or any member of the community to come into our agency to see where we are in our project, the great strides that we've made to offer our services online, as well as create efficiencies in our current services that we offer the constituents in Nevada. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but again, the invitation's open and we would be happy to have you come on site and see all the great work that's being done under this transformation effort.
Madam Chair, can I have a question? So in the 860 processes that the division is responsible for, you're saying that from 2015 through 2029, it is going to take you that long to figure out what are the tweaks, the curves, because that's a really long time, right? 860 processes does not equate to 14 years.
Again, Tanya Laney for the record, that's 867 core transactions that could have several sub-transactions to them. So when you look at a driver's license itself as a transaction, it could have several sub-transactions for a renewal, a duplicate, an address change, a name change. So each one of those functions comes with several sub-functions. Each of those connections that we have in our system connect to interfaces with other federal and state agencies to complete those transactions. So it's not just rebuilding the transaction itself, it's all of the connections and the technology behind that transaction that connect to multiple other systems throughout the infrastructure within the DMV. So it's not as simple as just recoding a transaction, if you will, to tell it to speak this new language to be completed online for the customers. Again, the letter of intent explains all the different connections that we have and all the different sub-functions that are done through a transaction. And again, we would be happy to have you on site to show you all the different intricacies that go into a transaction and what completes that service catalog of the over 860 transactions.
So since you've repeated the option for me to come down multiple times, I'm going to take advantage of that in August. And then I'm going to make mental note of those sub-functions. And then I'm sure I will have something to say as we continue this through the interim.
Tanya Laney, again, for the record, I am thrilled that you are taking us up on that offer, and we cannot wait to have you on site to show you all the great work that's been done.
It's going to be awesome. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions, comments? Not seeing any, I'll accept a motion to approve.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and maybe it can be a field trip, Senator Neal. Thank you very much, and with that, Madam Chair, I would move to approve as stated by staff.
We have a motion to approve from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion does carry. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. I think yours was the thickest pack today. Thank you for all you do. Members, that brings us up to the last item on today's agenda, and that is public comment. If you're here in the room, you'd like to make public comment, I invite you to the table. I see that there's someone at the table in Las Vegas. And if you'd like to call in with your public comment, the number is 888-475-4499. Our meeting ID for the day is 8205-137-2954. Then please press pound. We will start here in Carson City, go to Las Vegas, and then go to our phone lines. You can go ahead.
Good morning. Kent Irvin, ERVIN, Nevada Faculty Alliance. As we approach the Economic Forum Thursday and the NSHE budget closing on Friday, we recognize that the revenue situation looks dire and that hard decisions are being made. But budget policy is still important. The weighted student credit hour formula for NSHE colleges and universities was abandoned in 2023. That was a much bigger change to the instructional budgets than the transition from the old formula to the new formula recommended by the Interim Funding Formula Committee would have been. It mainly benefits the two comprehensive universities by about $10 million a year. The charge to the interim committee only allowed for redistribution of funding, not a fundamental change to the funding mechanism. Because the new formula was rejected in option 3 of the NSHE budget work session, we will now be going on 6 years with NSHE budgets not fully accounting for enrollment changes since the 2020 count year. If a formula based on credit hours or head counts is reinstituted in the future, it will be a much heavier lift. So when you close the NSHE budgets, please consider that neither the full enrollment trends nor the need for per-student funding for wraparound services identified by the interim committee are being addressed. Eliminating the formula completely is a larger shift than, and in the opposite direction from, the redistribution proposed by the formula committee. The funding committee identified unmet needs to provide services for part-time students that still need to be addressed. The committee also proposed outcomes-based funding to replace the performance pool carve-out, which never worked as intended, and we are happy to see that go away. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else here in Carson City, we'll go to Las Vegas. You can go ahead. Good morning.
Good morning. Doug Unger, DOUG, UNGER, Nevada Faculty Alliance. Thank you, Chairs Monroe Moreno, Dondero Loop, and members of the Joint Committee for your consideration looking ahead to this week's NSHE budget closing. On April 17th, the mass shooter at Florida State University killed 2 and injured 6. This news struck UNLV as a painful reminder of the December 6th, 2023 mass shooting that murdered 3 faculty, 2 of whom I knew personally. And she followed up with the Chancellor's Ad Hoc Safety and Security Committee to recommend urgently needed improvements on which I served for more than a year. I learned a lot. Also, as I prepared for the American Federation of Teachers, a presentation to the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. I will never comprehend how, unique to these United States, it has become socially normative to address individual grievances with guns, nor why our schools, our children, and their teachers have become the most at-risk targets of this violence. NSHE colleges and universities have done what they can, but it's not enough. Our institutions do not, on their own, have funds to do much more. We need camera systems with centralized monitoring, digital upgrades, increased numbers of campus police, renovations to buildings and public spaces, and doors to classrooms that lock from the inside so our teachers don't have to risk their lives as they did on December 6th, shots still firing, when they stepped out into halls and swiped Marlock cards so they could lock doors behind them. I could go on with this list, but the plea should be clear. No matter any shortfalls to the budget, put saving lives first. Please make campus safety a top priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing anyone else at the table in Las Vegas. Broadcast, do we have anyone joining us on the phone line that would like to make public comment at this time?
To provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller, please press star 6 to unmute.
Ian Hartshorn, IANHARTSHORN, Nevada Faculty Alliance. Thank you, chairs and members. As the committees work to close state budgets and make final decisions, the Nevada Faculty Alliance urges you to work to preserve the advances made in the last several years for state employees. Through uncertainty and challenge, state employees have worked to ensure that vital services, from education to healthcare, have been delivered to the citizens of our state, often forgoing more lucrative private sector jobs out of a sense of service and duty. We recognize that Nevada faces more fiscal difficulties in the coming biennium. Balancing budget shortfalls on the backs of state employees has been disastrous in the past, and we urge the committees to eschew such short-term solutions in this session. Historic gains have been made in restaffing after the pandemic and ensuring workers have competitive salaries. Benefits, though, still lag neighboring states and pre-pandemic, if not pre-Great Recession, norms. There is very little fat to trim, and none of it is with our hardworking state employees. In challenging times, political courage is needed. Currently, that political courage comes in the form of taking a hard look at new and amended revenue sources, not in the tired cliches of austerity. We encourage our legislators to find that courage. Education in particular is in a precarious moment, with a presidential administration keen to place decision-making and costs with states and local governments. Our leaders must rise to that challenge as well, and to ensure educators have the resources they need to fulfill their mission. Ensuring our higher education campuses are staffed, secure, and stable must be a priority in the coming weeks. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other callers?
Chair, there are no additional callers.
Thank you so much. So members, with that, no other callers. This meeting is adjourned. Have a great day.